live. Uh, so over here, I wanted to have a live with you, Melody, because I think we met very early in our Substack journeys, and we
Yeah.
found out pretty quickly that the direction that both of us are going in have been very aligned in terms of the, what we focus on and what we talk about on Substack. And specifically, I wanted to talk to you today about how people can be super disciplined and super competent individuals, but they might still not have found like the right thing for them in order to
Yeah.
keep them going, right? So can you introduce yourself? Tell me a little bit about who you are, like what you write about on Substack.
Sure. Yeah. So you're right. I think we joined Substack around the same time, and we've been like circling each other
Yeah,
for a while. And
yeah.
I think one of the reasons is we both have technical backgrounds, and so that's part of my story. I was in corporate America for like over 20 years, and
Mm,
working in project management. So my education is technical. I have a mechanical engineering degree. Even my
nice.
MBA is in finance. I'm all about data, facts, root cause analysis, which I'll talk about during our
Yeah.
conversation today. And yeah, so I found that I was highly competent in what I was doing. When I discovered project management as an actual career path, it was like, oh my gosh, well, this is just me thinking the way I do, the way I think
Yeah.
naturally, and doing what I naturally do. It was just very intrinsic uh, traits I already had, and just bringing them to life and being paid for it, basically.
Mm,
But what I discovered along the way is being excellent at something isn't the same as loving it.
yeah.
and I mean, technically with what I was doing, I can apply it to anything, but I just really wasn't enjoying the culture fits of some of the companies I was in, and I wasn't inspired by the work we were doing, and it eroded me over time, and really started to I burn out. I mean, and so we can talk about all the different aspects of burnout, because that term is thrown around all the time, right? But I think it propagates itself differently for different people. But there are some common themes. I was just uninspired. I was bored. I need to be challenged. I'm someone who's always pursuing excellence and pursuing the next step, and I'm really performance based. And honestly,
Yeah.
that's what kept me in those roles for so long. I would always say, in the midst of it, in the midst of the pain, like, oh, it's a good thing. It's good for these companies that I care so much about my performance, because I don't actually
Yeah.
care so much about the work that we're doing. But I was still able to perform at a very high level because I cared about my own performance. And I was in a zone that I have in terms of my skill sets and my ability to do the work. But over time, it just really wore me down to not care about the actual work itself, right? I was doing projects that these companies wanted to do, and there was nothing wrong with them. They just weren't inspiring to me. And so, for me, I started to really not be the best version of myself. I started to get super cynical.
Mm,
My presence was not always the best. I remember coming out of a meeting and someone saying to my boss, "Who pissed in her Cheerios?" she,
oh
right?
wow.
And so now I'm someone who would always say what no one else is saying, right? I
Yeah.
did really well in my career because of that, right? I wasn't just a wallflower. And it was part of my job too, but I'm naturally good at that. I'm not a people pleaser. And so I'll say what people need to hear, whether they want to hear it or not, right?
Yeah.
But that can quickly take a turn if you become this disgruntled employee, right? So
Yeah.
my delivery maybe wasn't the best all the time. And so she told me that, and I was like, you know what? Fair. And I took a leave and I did a lot of soul searching. But, burnout, I think the root of it, honestly, is really trying to layer performance tactics over something you're not inspired by already. And we can only do that for so long. And it'll it'll present itself differently in different people. But ultimately, if you're just grinding away and, you have mood swings and you're not the best version of yourself and you're uninspired, those are all signs that you need to pay attention to. And it's time for a pivot. And that's what happened with me.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, I can relate a lot to that story. I also came from an engineering background, and I was stuck in it for about 2 to 3 years, and I was like, this is burning me out in the exact way that you were describing. And I knew that even though I was working hard, I still didn't really feel anything. Like I didn't get any meaning out of my work. So
Yeah.
that's when I decided to make that pivot. But it's interesting because what you said like kind of reminded me a little bit about like Reese Witherspoon. She recently made like some TikTok about like chase your talents, don't chase your dreams, which is like kind of the opposite of what you just said, right? Like if you find your strengths, that means you'll be happy. Which I don't know what you think
Well,
about that.
so it's the application. So here's what happened. I really dove into trying to figure this out. So I'm a problem solver.
Mm,
Way back, my sister would always say, like, if you got a problem, I'll solve it. Like that should be on like a business card. And that predates you, I think, age-wise.
yeah,
But that's from
probably,
a
yeah,
song.
yeah.
It's from a song that like Gen Xers and maybe millennials will recognize. But that's just my nature, right? So I attack everything from that perspective. And I don't want to just waste time and energy treating symptoms. I want to get to the root of problems, right? And
Right.
that's how I approach everything. And so when I started dealing with my own burnout, I mean, I dove into what can I do about it? Is it them? Is it me? Like what's going on with my perspective? I approached it from a spiritual perspective, which I do everything. And I kept coming up short. There's a lot of, think deep about it. There's a lot of self-help books. It's a huge industry, right?
Yeah,
But so many, I mean, pretty much everything else I've found is trying to emulate what other people are doing and trying to layer discipline and behavior changes on top of a weak foundation. And as you know, when you're looking at trying to solve any issue, you need to get to the root. You need to do a root cause analysis. You need to figure out what's really going on. And that's where you need to start. And if you're trying to layer tactics on top of a weak foundation because you haven't gotten to that layer, you're just going to burn out in doing that, right? Your
yeah,
burnout is just going to get refocused in your self improvement journey instead of
yeah.
in your job. And, but I had this relentless pursuit of it. And I found this method that I'm now trained in that is exactly that. When I discovered it and used it myself, I was like, oh my God, there actually is a process. There's an actual process for getting to the root of the issue, and then everything else can be layered on top of that. Because as I was looking at what I would do next in my career, I could be a productivity expert, right? Like I'm not
Mm,
casually productive. I'm like super disciplined in everything I do, but you know why? It's because they're in the things I love to do. They're in my
yeah,
highest priorities. And so people would say to me, well, why don't you do something with fitness, like, or nutrition or something? Because if you need help with your sleep habits, your exercise, your nutrition, your health, whatever, I will have a lot of resources for you. But you know why? It's because I care about it, right? And so there's a difference between wanting something and aspiring for something and then actually prioritizing it in your daily behavior. And if you're trying to prioritize something you don't actually prioritize subconsciously, that's where we get stuck in the need for external motivation and the
yeah,
need for trying to be disciplined. Because the reality is, when you do this root cause analysis, you find out you're already disciplined. You don't lack any of that. You don't lack the energy and the discipline and all of that in the areas you actually care about. But we haven't been taught to figure out truly what we actually care about. Instead, what we end up talking about when we have these conversations are the things we wished we cared more about, or the things we aspire to care about. Or you end up talking about intrinsic values, like I care about family, I care about God, I care about, but that's not really what's going to help you practically with your like everyday career, you know? And so
Yeah, definitely.
that's the key, really, and that's the process I'm so blessed to have found, and it's now what I implement, which totally makes sense. I tell people now from my childhood what I do, and they all, this has been eye-opening for me. I told a friend yesterday, she was like, "Well, you've always been a mindset coach." I mean, I say these terms even though they're not quite accurate, but because
Yeah,
someone will get the gist easily without a long conversation. And I was like, "Really?" And I'm like, when I was young, my tactic was really like, get your shit together, which isn't actually that helpful.
yeah,
But at the same time, like I just didn't have the knowledge and the skills to actually be able to give someone an actionable process that would work for them. And now I do. So it really just kind of came about nicely in my life.
that's pretty awesome. It's cool to hear. I want
Yeah.
to take some time to welcome some of the people in the chat. Blossoming Crone, Chris Afuli, Claudia, Jan. Hope I pronounced that right. Marlana and Justice. Appreciate you all.
Yeah,
And
welcome.
yeah, and yeah. So I guess a follow up question, because you said it kind of aligned really nicely into your life when you were able to make that transition. In terms of like, how can somebody else recognize that they're trying to perform for like different values or different aspirations than what's actually meant for them internally, like through that root cause
Well, when it's not working.
when
When
it's not
you
working? Okay.
yeah, I mean, when you constantly need, if you're in a mode where you're striving, and let's say you're trying to get to the next level in whatever it is you're doing, or you're trying to develop a new habit, it is a common strategy to dive into self-help. How do we get better at anything, right? And so let's assume in this conversation that someone's doing that, right? Well, most of what's out there is around how to motivate yourself, right? It's the morning routine. It's the and I'm gonna say it kind of like those things are great, but you're gonna do them when you care about them, and that's the missing piece that I'm getting at here. So you'll see a lot of tactics, and it's all around behavior and getting yourself motivated. And so if you're trying to work on a part of your life where you're trying to either change what you're doing or get better at something you're doing, like maybe you've hit a plateau, the answer isn't layering on tactics if they're misaligned. If you find that you're spinning your wheels and you're not able to like really follow through on goals you're setting for yourself, if the issue is really follow through and you're trying to be more disciplined so that you will follow through, you're not actually in your zone. That's
Okay.
what that's indicating is that you aren't actually being true to your own authentic self and your own set of subconscious priorities because we all have them. No two people are the same. Everyone's are different. And this is, by the way, the root of our self condemnation. It's why we beat
Mm,
ourselves up. Why can't I get better at this? What's wrong with me? How come that person can do it and I can't? Well, you're probably trying to do something that they're intrinsically motivated to do and you're not yet. And I
yeah.
say yet because we can't address this. And it's also why we judge other people. We judge other people based on what we truly prioritize and value. And it's just the way our brains work. So you this discovery process, there's these 13 questions, and when you answer them, you're like, oh, well, this actually makes a lot of sense. It really it peels back the onion in a very systematic, almost kind of obvious way, but we haven't been taught how to figure out what really, really matters to us. We've been taught about the things that should matter to
Mm,
us. And I followed that, right? I was like, I want to be successful. Oh, I'm really good at math. I was like really advanced in math. I had college credits. Oh, well, so what should we do? Oh, I'll get an engineering degree because I looked at it as a practical solution. High ROI, right, at the time, yes, back in the 1900s. And, I can. I knew what the career path looked like, and I wanted to really optimize, because I'm always trying to optimize my input to output ratio, so to speak, right? But none of that included figuring out what I actually care about, because that's not what our institutions present to us, right? Like, there's nothing in our educational path that shows us how to identify our own calling and what makes us special and what we bring to the world. And I believe that every single one of us is here because we have something unique to contribute. And we're just not taught how to figure that out. We're taught how to fit someone else's mold because it's a lot more profitable for companies and educational institutions to keep us trapped doing what they want us to do versus, you know, helping us bring out really what we're meant to do. And so, really, when you go through the process, it's pretty straightforward. Anyone can answer these questions, but if you don't get to your baseline of what you actually care about, not what you've been told to care about, not what your parents said to care about, not what school said would be profitable. Those are all inherited, right? And some of them
Right.
are aspirational. They're who you want to be and maybe who you think you are. But no, let's look at where do you spend your time? Where do you spend your money? What do people come to you for already, right? There's layers of questions that reveal your current state and where you are right now, and you can't build anything meaningful unless you know that. And most people don't know that about themselves. Most people are judging themselves by those aspirations and by other people's priorities. And that's why we feel good about ourselves if we align with someone's aspirations, or we feel bad about ourselves because maybe we want to be somewhere where we're not yet. And those are all feelings based versus data based. We need data, real time data. And that's what this is. This process is evidence in your lived priorities. It's evidence, it's not aspiration. Because if we're just building off of aspiration all day long and trying to build our discipline around that and trying to motivate ourselves around aspirations, we're just going to always be run by our feelings and
Yeah.
letting ourselves down.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah. I appreciate that answer, and I mean I can relate a lot to it because I think a lot of people, it's like very easy to get stuck in our heads about, oh, like I'm not doing well right now, and like, and you just start to see that as like it becomes like a positive feedback loop. Well, technically negative, but positive, whatever you want to call it. But it's like this feedback loop where you tell yourself I'm not doing good enough even though I'm working hard, and then that brings up those feelings that you're talking about of self-worth, and then you're like, oh, I can't do it anymore, and then your brain will start to compare with other people that already are doing well, and then it just becomes like a toxic like cycle of stuff essentially that can definitely put you in a bad place if you don't do something to stop that
Well,
cycle.
you can 100% be released of that.
Yeah.
Because what happens is, if anyone looks at like what a good day is, like when you feel good at the end of the day, it's because you've been living out and meeting your top core intrinsic priorities in that day. If you feel bad about yourself, you've been comparing yourself to someone else's and you've been living out low priority tasks that day. So when you are constantly trying to motivate yourself externally, it's because you're working lower in your priority list. And again, you don't even really recognize this. Until you know your top core subconscious priorities in life, and we tend to fill our days with the aspirational side of things, and then that's where we feel drained. When you recognize and then are living inside your core priorities, you have endless energy. You don't even need external motivation. It's all intrinsic. And so that's where the self-awareness, this like process is just a next level self-awareness is so important, because you'll find that you already have all of the traits you're aspiring to have. You're just trying to apply them in areas that you're going to find out aren't actually that important to you.
Wow, yeah, I love that. So like being able to just stay curious about yourself, instead of just
Yeah.
assuming that things have to be this way. So I,
Well, and I would say it's more than curious. Like, use a process. Use a process to actually
mm,
give yourself the data and say, oh, wow, like, okay, yeah, this is actually what I care about, and it's okay. This is how I'm made. Now, we can change our priorities. So, like, if you want to get ahead in an aspect of life, and we can get into that, there are ways to adjust. You don't, it doesn't, it's not
okay.
like a self-awareness and then you stay there, right? Because we're all trying to grow. Like, that's my whole life. I'm trying to get better at everything I do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's actually why self-improvement, it made sense that this became my career, because that's my number two priority. I was like, oh, well, that's why people are saying they saw it in me my whole life, even though I didn't necessarily. I just knew I pursue excellence. But if you're pursuing it in an area that you don't actually value, that's where you really burn out.
Okay. Yeah, I see what you mean. And you that process you're talking about, that's your purpose framework, right? If I'm correct.
Yeah, it's the very first step. Literally, like the first tool, it's the first 13 questions of the first tool. And so I have a couple tools that layer on actionable insights, but they start with that foundation. They start with that foundation of self awareness that is really peeling back layers you've likely never looked at because we haven't been taught how to do this analytically, right? And that's the difference here. We're not just looking at how do you feel, because
Hmm.
that fluctuates, every day, right? I mean, I'm a 50-year-old woman. I can tell you that fluctuates every day. If I function off of feeling, that's not going to be the best data.
Yeah.
So I need a better way to evaluate that, right? But yeah, you can. So there's a way to take where you currently are and where you want to be, and you study the traits of the greats. But when I say study, what you do is you identify the people who have these traits. And my process, so this is where my one-on-one work comes in, is helping you see that you actually have all the traits, actions, and inactions that you admire in others. And what happens is when we have people on pedestals, we think we're less than, and that affects our ability to actually perform and grow. But when we realize, and everyone possesses every single trait, so the people you admire, and oh, by the way, the people you also don't like, we have those traits as
Mm,
well, because
okay.
every human possesses every trait, and it might not be in the same exact area to the same degree, but it's there. And the process is, once you know your baseline, which is the first 13 questions of my first tool, you can use the rest of the tools, but I mean, I guess I can explain what they do. One of them is helps you realize what business would be right for you and how to actually choose your niche so that you're starting a business that you actually love and you're going to be intrinsically motivated to do. And then it helps you with your messaging around that. But if you want to work on me one on one with belief recalibration, and that's like, so the difference there is a lot of mindset work is trying to layer on that weak or maybe non-existing foundation, and try to think positive, which is where we get into toxic positivity. But
Mm,
belief recalibration is around, no, no, you have what it takes. You just don't see it yet. And here's how to take where you currently are and where you might want to be. And there's an actual process, and I've told you about it in the past about benefits and drawbacks. But what you do is you take the benefits and drawbacks of where you want to be, and you have to match them with where you currently are, what you currently prioritize, because you have to convince your brain that you can do this and that you're meant to do this. It's about retraining your subconscious to get on board, because here's what happens. If you layer generic affirmations, and this is why external motivation doesn't work, our brains are incredible bullshit detectors. They're like,
mm,
whatever, you don't believe that, nice try.
yeah.
And this is a scientific process for actually addressing that and getting your brain to actually believe it, because we can do anything, but we're all made to do something as individuals that's different than the next person. So it's futile to try to be second at living someone else's life when you can be first in your own. And that's what this process helps people uncover in themselves.
Wow.
And
So
it's not
now,
this is like, woo woo process. This is like,
yeah.
I needed something that was real. I'm not just gonna like try to feel it out. I'm not gonna I don't know, go into a drum circle. I don't know. Like I need
Yeah, we've all
like
seen those before.
something real. Well, there's a whole spirituality industry that's falling apart, and it's because people are seeking this, right? They're seeking meaning,
Yeah,
they're seeking purpose. And what happens is if you chase it that way, you feel great for a little while and then you come crashing down because it's all a house of cards. And until you really get in tune with what you are here to do as an individual, like what's your calling, you're just you're just chasing feel good moments and you're going to chase that the rest of your life instead of actually feeling secure and confident in your own skin, which we all should.
yeah, that's a great point, and yeah, I agree with you on that front. I mean, I think it's like a lot of like spirituality stuff is more about like they try to make you feel good in the moment, which is great, but it's similar to what you were saying before. It's more of a tactic because like it only helps you feel good for a certain amount of time, and then you realize, oh, like I still didn't I
I
still didn't
didn't
discuss
actually
the root
address the
cause.
issue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
still I still am bringing along the same type of like intrinsic worth that I already had before. I'm not recalibrating at all. So like
No.
if the
And that
foundation
keeps
doesn't
those
change,
people making money, right? Because then you'll max out your credit card on the next one because maybe someday you'll get to their level, which is all smoke and mirrors. It
yeah,
keeps they
definitely.
know that it's not gonna really work, but it'll keep you chasing it. And
Yeah,
I'm about addressing the real issue and getting people living out their true identity and being authentic to yourself because then that breaks down all the barriers of self judgment and others' judgment and just like reeling, trying to figure things out. I mean, you have so much power in you already that you just don't even realize because we haven't been taught how to tap into it.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I mean I can personally attest to that those benefits and drawbacks that I did from the advice that you gave me. And yeah, like I like the fact that you have to actually sit down. You have to take that analytical lens and like look at it, like
Hmm.
just put it down on paper to look at it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I think a lot of us don't take that step because I don't know, maybe we think we're too busy or we got too many things going on in our lives. But like
Well, and in
I like that.
fairness, that's a that's what we do, but like it's a 14-step process when you work with me one on one to
Hmm.
and what you do is you look at where you want to go, right? So let's talk about the scenario of like trying to get maybe you're already in your zone. So this process is done with, I mean, every walk of life. This is why choosing a niche is kind of hard
Yeah.
because this can be for literally it's for students, it's for like kids, it's for entrepreneurs, athletes, musicians, anyone who is trying to learn anything either because they feel stuck or because maybe they're doing really well and just want to continue to get better, right? And so one way it's applied is the traits of the greats. You look at, okay, who in your industry or in your line of work is really like knocking it out of the park. And it's not about idolizing them. It's about looking at what is it they do and what is the trait. See, we get really, really specific about the specific trait, action or inaction. And then we go through a very specific process of what are the benefits and drawbacks of you doing that or them doing it. And here's where it gets really interesting. What's the drawback of that going well? What's the benefit of it not going well?
Mm,
We really dig deep and it's really eye-opening and it's what allows you to realize, oh, I have those same traits, good and bad, because we have to neutralize and balance our perception of things to be working out of reality instead of a skewed perception because we have a couple things we can control in life: our decisions, our actions, and our perception. Everything else is out of our control. And so if we're really
yeah.
trying to master anything in life, those are the areas we need to be paying attention to.
Yeah, I see what you mean, and yeah, I also agree a lot with like don't put them on a pedestal as well because that can also become its own trap. And
But you can study them.
Yeah,
So you
study
can
them though. Yeah.
study them, right, without feeling like less than. But what happens is our survival mechanism and our primal brain, you know, all stress comes from fear of gaining something we're avoiding or losing something we desire. And our brain
Wow.
kicks in, our subconscious primal brain kicks in to protect us from that. But that plays out in so many different ways. And one of the things it does is, trying to avoid you feeling inadequate, for example, and just to go with the pedestal, and uh, perspective of things. And if you see someone who's like really good at what they're doing and you think, oh, I don't know if I'll ever get there, maybe you don't even think that. But if your subconscious thinks that, that's why you're not getting ahead. And so this process breaks that down. It just destroys it. It destroys it for your subconscious in a way that your brain will actually process it instead of talking positively to yourself, which is actually not bad. Our brain is always listening. I'm telling my kids that all the time. We do need to speak truth into our life, but it needs to be our truth, not someone else's. And that's
Mm,
why this root
yeah.
cause analysis is so important, because your brain knows when you're just trying to fake it with someone else's affirmation versus something that actually resonates with you.
Yeah, I see what you mean. So that way you're not trying to force something onto yourself that might not align. And you
It's just
you
not going to
do
work. It's
yeah,
futile.
yeah. And you do talk a lot about like being able to gain that aligned authority. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about like how is that different from like regular confidence or expertise?
Oh my gosh, you feel it in your bones. You are
Yeah.
so, when you are functioning within your own authentic, aligned authority, you you don't second guess yourself. You're not trying to be someone else. You can speak so confidently, and you can also, you end up with more energy after working, whatever, after doing whatever it is you do, than when you started. It's
Yeah.
energizing because your intrinsic drive is where it's coming from versus feeling drained because you're trying to do something that you're either not ready for. And when I say not ready for it, meaning you haven't done all of this work and have it in your top three priorities, because we can adjust them, like I said. But it's so different. It's you're not forcing anything. That's what alignment really is. Alignment is with who you are, not who you want to be. And it's okay to have someone that you want to be, and you can get there. And there is a process that I have for doing it that I've learned. But if you're trying to function prematurely, it's just not going to work, and you're going to be drained, and you're going to feel defeated. And it's not going to be for lack of talent. It's not lack of discipline or energy, meaning you're applying energy to it. But what happens is you're applying energy and you're being drained instead of it coming from within. And so it plays out just radically differently in your life, and then when you're trying to force something that you're just not there yet. And
Yeah.
maybe you're not meant to go, what I say yet, maybe you're even not meant to go in a direction you're trying to go. And that's again where this root cause analysis comes in, because you might be trying to force something that you're not actually even not interested in. Maybe you want to be. When we talk about entrepreneurship, people try to essentially back into a profitable niche, right? Because if you're going to start a business, you should probably start one that makes money, right? But
Yeah.
ultimately, you're going to have to run this business. And so if you end up starting one that you're really actually not intrinsically driven to do, and it doesn't actually inspire you, it's going to fail. You're going to hate it. You're just going to hate it, and you're going to be trying to force tactics onto something that you created that you don't actually love. And so it's absolutely worth figuring that out first.
Yeah. I love that so much, and I can actually personally attest to that actually happening to me.
Oh,
So
me too. Me
yeah.
too. I totally had like all these like false starts where I was like, well, no wonder this isn't working out. Because when I discovered this whole process, it was like, it was just so liberating to have the information.
Yeah. So like for me, it was a situation where I was in a career path I didn't like. That that I was trying to force. But then I have another half to my story where I started a side business while I was still in college, and I kept that going for like 3 to 4 years, and I was doing a lot of those tactics to try to get myself, like just keep going. And even though I was highly disciplined and I could get a lot of stuff done, I was doing door to door sales for it, and I was still keeping up with my day job and everything. But it's like you can only go so far until that breaks you down. So I eventually
Yeah.
ended up quitting my job impulsively because eventually your body is keeping the tab, keeping the score, and it will
Oh yeah.
break down on you.
Oh, I
So
have a whole long story about that. That yeah, my body was like, done. You're done.
yeah, but yeah,
Yeah.
now that I've finally made a transition, like switched to a different career path that's more fulfilling, and also I'm launching a new coaching business that aligns more with what I want to do in my life. That's been like I've been just as disciplined, but the difference is like it doesn't really feel like a lot of work to me. Like
Hmm.
feels like everything has been moving the right way, and it, it's just a lot less friction, a lot less resistance than it was before, which is
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. But then, so same for me. But then now we end up running businesses, right? And as solopreneurs, we're responsible for every aspect of our business. And that's where it gets tricky because we're people, we're one person. And,
Yeah, yeah,
a business requires multiple disciplines, right? And we're probably not intrinsically motivated to do every aspect of what a business requires to run and be profitable, right? And so, we have the marketing side of things, you have the bookkeeping side of things, you have the creating content. I mean, there's meeting with clients, like so. If you're doing coaching, likewise, you doing that, and that's the part you love the most. But no one's going to find you if you aren't doing the marketing piece, right? So,
yeah,
how do we do it all? And my mentor really drives home a lot how we really need to strategically outsource the parts of the business that aren't in our top three to five priorities. And so again, this is where it's so critical to know what yours are, because also when you hire someone, you want to make sure that they are functioning within their top 3 to 5 priorities, because if they're just doing a job, right, like that's what we're talking about, you're not going to get the results that you're looking for. And as solopreneurs, if when you're starting a business, you have limited financial resources, right? So if you are going to outsource something, you want to make sure you're going to get a really solid ROI there, right? But you'll get so much more than you paid for when someone is functioning within their genius zone and in their highest priorities, and they're going to do a better job than we would if we're trying to do something that's outside of ours. So it's once you learn this method and you realize these things about yourself, you can start perceiving them in others, and it helps you identify talent and fit just way better than you've ever had the facility to do previous to learning this information. And it's really powerful. I mean, it's what would take us to the next level, right? With being able to expand.
yeah. That's powerful. And yeah, I think none of us can really be like Superman or Superwoman and like try to do like all of these things at once.
Well, you
Especially
can. You can in your top three,
in
the
your top
top
three. Yeah,
three to five. But yeah, it's unrealistic to be someone else's version of Superman or
yeah,
Superwoman.
yeah. That's great. And I mean, if someone like anyone that's listening right now, and they're recognizing themselves in that area where they feel like they're trapped and they're not able to, you know, point their discipline and their efforts in the right direction, like what's the one thing you want them to walk away with specifically?
You need to know who you are. You
Okay.
need to, and it's not just thinking real hard about yourself, because when we do that, we're measuring ourselves against these aspirational priorities, these inherited priorities, where we think we measure up or don't relative to our goals. That is how we evaluate ourselves. But if you evaluate the lived evidence in your life through this systematic, like 13 questions, and you look at, all right, there is actual evidence, and we all have it, where we spend our time, where we spend our money, where we're trusted already, what do we surround ourselves with. It's a very systematic, evidence-based process. And until you know that, you're just you're just going to spiral. You're just going to continue to layer things on an either non-existent or a very weak foundation. And so just know that you have the power and the drive and the natural discipline already to thrive in your life. But if you don't feel like you're in that zone, it's because you're trying to live second, third, fourth in someone else's life, and that's not working out, because it doesn't for anyone, and you're just driving yourself crazy unnecessarily. It's that root cause analysis of our existing current state based in actual evidence that actually lays the foundation for us to build on.
Okay, awesome. Well, that's good to hear that, we don't have to stay stuck in whatever area we're
No,
in.
it's not
But
necessary.
yeah. So where can the audience find you? You have any links or websites?
Of course. It'd be terrible if I didn't. I tell people all this stuff and I'm like, okay, good luck, go find it. No, yeah, you can go to my Substack, and I actually have, so there's my lead magnet, so my freebie is the first six questions. And the reason it's just the first six and not the 13 is because I use ChatGPT, and I know this is one of your questions. So why would I use AI as part of this process, right? Because they're not necessarily like personal questions. Where do you spend your money? Where do you spend your time? Is not like that deeply like spiritual, so to speak. But the when I first used this process, it was just a questionnaire, right? I mean, I could give people the 13 questions, and I actually have no problem doing that. Here's the issue. You'll spend time answering these questions, and you really should. Each question, you should really put, any data analysis, garbage in, garbage out. If you kind
Yeah,
of half-ass it and you really don't put the time and effort into like really answering wholly and honestly, you won't get out of it the power that it has. And so you want to take the time, answer each one thoughtfully, but when you're doing it in a paper format, what happens is when you get to the end, it's 13 questions. Ultimately, you're looking for your top three. So like 39, answers basically, because you try to give about three answers per each one. Now it's on you to analyze it. It's on you to find the common threads. It's for you to figure out, well, where is that golden thread that reveals what my top priorities are, my subconscious priorities. And I think that's a tall ask. It was a tall ask for me, and I'm an analytical person. And what I realized is when I started learning how to use and create custom AI tools, and we don't need to get into the AI like ins and outs discussion, right? Like
it would
there's
be pretty long discussion
there's a
there.
lot of
Yeah,
fear around AI. Yeah, that's like a whole different topic, and I'm not oblivious to that. But what AI really is, especially a really focused tool like the ones I've built, it's just a mirror. What it's doing is data analysis. It is literally taking your answer for each question and mirroring back to you what you've said and analyzing those common threads, and you're getting real-time feedback in the form of your data analysis. And it's just, not only is it more enjoyable because you're like interacting with the feedback of the analysis real time instead of just, this like static process. It's just so much more accurate. I mean, I've done it so many times, so many people have used it, and the insights that it gives you about yourself are insights that you've not really realized and come up with on your own, because if you had done that, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
yeah,
Right? If people were really like this self-aware, there wouldn't be a self-help industry, right?
yeah,
And so that's the reason I went to an AI tool, because also, while I could give you the questionnaire, the tool takes it many steps further. So then you start talking about Genius Zone, because now the tool has analyzed your answers to 13 very insightful questions, and it's now giving you your top like three. I programmed it to like be 3 to 7, but really your top three is your zone, and then you go into your genius zone. So that's in the application, and a purpose statement and affirmations that are based on you, not someone else. And the power in AI in general is data analysis. I know people are using it for all kinds of things, but in this case, it's looking for the common thread, and it's very efficient in doing that. And so it's just so much more effective than trying to do it yourself. And it's self-serve. So you can do it on your own. You don't need to work with me. And that's why, like, if you do want to work with me when we get into the belief recalibration, you still have to do those 13 questions because it's what we bounce the recalibration off of. And I wanted to make this attainable for people. And there's a cost aspect. If you're paying me to do that with you, it's going to cost way more than if you just use the tool, right?
Yeah.
And you can use the tool without ever working with me and gain that insight, and it's just much more affordable, and you can do it whenever you want, right? In fact, my brother-in-law is doing it right now, and he's like literally answering one question a day because he's really taking his time with it, right? And that's what this deserves. I mean, if you really want to unlock what's inside of you, take the time to answer these 13 questions, and you'll be amazed what comes out of it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is not it's not an easy process trying to recalibrate your whole life. So if you want to do it,
Well,
you
we
have
don't
to.
we don't try to do your whole life
Yeah,
at
yeah.
once.
But
But what happens is if we do the biggest charge, if we do like the thing you're most charged about, there's like a trickle down effect that happens. You end up neutralizing things you didn't even work on. So it's really powerful in that way. But again, it's all based off of that root cause current state analysis as the first
awesome,
step.
awesome. Well, if you don't have any other final remarks, I think that's a good place to stop it.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate getting to talk to you actually, instead of, just, I mean, it's always nice to do the comments and to have the chats, but it's also nice to talk in person.
Of course, yeah. I mean, it's been a long time coming at this
Yeah.
point. So
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate your time.
yeah, likewise. And I hope everybody has a great Mother's Day weekend.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for joining. Hope this was helpful. And, you can find both of us on Substack. If you have more questions, just reach out, and, yeah, happy to help.
All right, bye.
All right. Bye.